Sadly, there will likely be more. Before it ends, that's the way it is.
I think this destroys Donald Trump's presidency. I mean, if he goes over there and just kills a bunch of Iranians, a bunch of Israelis are dead, a bunch of U.S. soldiers are dead, but the regime still stands, I mean, I think that's death for the rest of his presidency.
This is not going to be sending troops into Iran.
Except that President Trump has told the New York Post literally 2 hours ago he's not ruling out sending U.S. ground troops.
If this turns into a full-on regime change forever war, that's something that's going to prove to be very unpopular in this midterm year.
Our service members deserve better than a commander-in-chief who does not have a plan. They deserve better than a 5-time draft dodger.
This is a total betrayal of his own voters.
President Trump has made it explicitly clear that America first means whatever he wants it to mean, but that hasn't stopped many other people attempting to redefine it on his behalf. Ben Shapiro says that attacking Iran is America first because it serves the US national interest. Lindsey Graham and Mark Levine, among others, say that starting a war can, in a roundabout way, be an act of peace if it prevents war and suffering in the future. What none of the advocates for attacking Iran can argue with a straight face is that Trump campaigned on war with Iran. He didn't. In fact, it was, of course, explicitly the opposite.
In addition, there must also be a complete commitment to dismantling the entire globalist neocon establishment that is perpetually dragging us into endless wars, pretending to fight for freedom and democracy abroad. We should have never gone into the Middle East. We should have never gone into the Middle East. Under my leadership, we will turn the page forever on those foolish, stupid days of never-ending wars. I am the president who delivers peace. I was the first president in decades who didn't start a war. I think we would have been good with Iran. I don't want to do anything bad to Iran. Speaking of World War III, I'll keep you out of World War III. What would happen if we had a war? We won't. With me.
Well, both President Trump and Vice President Vance billed themselves as the pro-peace ticket, a message which massively expanded his election-winning coalition. Tulsi Gabbard said only Trump could prevent war with Iran as she switched sides to join him. And J.D. Vance articulated very clearly that a war with Iran would be expensive and against his country's interests.
Israel has the right to defend itself, but America's interest is sometimes going to be distinct. Like sometimes we're going to have overlapping interests, and sometimes we're going to have distinct interests. And our interest, I think, very much is in not going to war with Iran, right? It would be a huge distraction of resources. It would be massively expensive to our country.
So the obvious question is, what's changed? Is Iran more of a threat now than it was 18 months ago? If it is, nobody's plausibly explained why. Trump has worn many hats over the past few weeks in attempting to justify the war that is now underway. It's the protesters, it's the nukes, it's the long-range ballistic missiles, it's the inherent inconvenience of an evil regime which has for decades been a thorn in America's side. But none of this will satisfy those in Trump's base who voted specifically for the pro-peace ticket, and is unlikely to satisfy the masses of moderates and swing voters who care above all about cheaper groceries and higher wages. Clearly, America first means different things to different people, but it stands to reason that above all, it surely meant fixing your own country before meddling with everybody else's. Well, joining me to discuss all of this is Ben Ferguson, co-host of The Verdict with Ted Cruz, Tim Miller, commentator at the Bulwark, Dave Smith, host of Part of the Problem, Jack Posobiec, host of Human Events, and Joe Carducci, aka JoJo from Jerz. Well, welcome to all of you. Ben Ferguson, what's happened here? What's happened to the peace-loving Trump who wasn't going to go into the Middle East? I saw Axios reporting that no president in history has now launched attacks on more countries than Donald Trump. Where does that sit with America first, stay out of the Middle East, stay out of foreign wars?
Yeah, I think there's a very specific aspect of what Donald Trump's doing that the American people are okay with, and it's different than forever wars. He did not going to go in and do what we did in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I think what the president also understood in pivoting is once he was back in the White House and saw the intelligence and realized what Iran is doing and what they're clearly trying to do, and what they're trying to do not only with Israel, but also with the United States of America, You just cannot allow them to get even anywhere close to having a nuclear weapon. They are a threat to Americans. They've killed more American troops in my lifetime than any other country. Their proxies in Hezbollah and Hamas are a great example of that. They are a sponsor of terror, which again is the worst that I've seen in my lifetime as well. Anyone that's a bad actor in that part of the world, they will fund. They love funding terrorists. And once you saw what they did to Israel and the attack there, and advocating and supporting and advancing and giving aid and arms and money and training to what happened in Israel, I think the president had to look at it differently. Now, to be clear, this president, and I've spoken with the White House a lot lately. I've sat with the Speaker of the House the day before the State of the Union. I sat yesterday with Senator Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio. They all are saying the same exact thing. This is not going to be sending troops into Iran. So I think that is the biggest difference here. The president understands the threat. He also understands endless wars are never a good thing, and he doesn't want to do that at all, and he won't.
Right, except that President Trump has told the New York Post literally 2 hours ago he's not ruling out sending US ground troops into Iran if they were necessary. He said, I don't have the yips with respect to boots on the ground. Every president says there'll be no boots on the ground. I don't say it. I say probably don't need them, but if they're necessary. So
you
Trump
look at
is leaving that door open.
But look at Venezuela, and that's what he's talking about. If there's a situation where you have to go in and take someone out in the way that we did in Venezuela, by the way, we're not invading Venezuela. We're not staying in Venezuela. You have to look at the context of what the president is saying there. Like, I don't think that's ambiguity in any capacity by this president. What he's made clear is we're not going to go in and invade and take over a country. That is not what he wants to do. Same thing in Venezuela. I would say Venezuela is a success. Were there technically boots on the ground there for X number of hours? Yes, there were. Are we staying there indefinitely? No. Have we invaded the country and taken over? No, we have not. And that's why the president said, not once, but twice in his 2 speeches, I am preparing a place for you to be able to take over your own country. This may be the best chance you get to do it to the people of Iran. So you better go out there and take back your country as we are doing this for you. And we've seen the people in Iran, they have celebrated that overwhelmingly.
Okay, Tim Miller, it seems like there's a lot of hoops being jumped here to try and explain what is, to me, I've known Donald Trump a long time. There's been a clear change in his attitude towards meddling in foreign countries and foreign wars, and in particular in the Middle East. And, he might have perfectly good reasons for doing it, but it's certainly a very different rhetoric now that he's using to what he was using when he was campaigning to be re-elected. This problem, it seems to me, with the attack on Iran is a massive country. It has a very ruthless, very large regime, which basically extends to all aspects of Iranian society. There are at least 1.5 million Revolutionary Guard, regular army, paramilitaries, possibly as many as 2 million, none of whom at the moment appear ready to throw in the towel as Donald Trump has asked them to. So if people do rise up in the way that Donald Trump would like, his utopia is that all these airstrikes bully the regime in such a way that the people sense their moment and they rise up and they overthrow them. But at the moment, they would be facing, a lot of them, immediate death, as we saw when the recent protests were repressed. And that seems to me to be the fundamental flaw here in what Donald Trump wants to happen and the reality on the ground.
A lot of that sounds right to me, Piers. Look, this is obviously a betrayal of his campaign promises. I mean, that MAGA supporters can spin it however they want, but J.D. Vance in that clip you played was just very blunt about this, and there's nothing that has changed on the ground, making Iran a bigger threat since fall of 2024. In fact, Iran's been degraded a lot since fall of 2024, and so this is a total betrayal of his own voters. But to the actual plan here, I think what Ben just laid out is totally incoherent. Right? Like, if the idea here is that this is a moment where the Iranian people have an opportunity to grab their own freedom and we're going to help them, okay, well, that requires troops on the ground. I mean, like, that would be a coherent objective. At least we want to free the Iranian people from the Ayatollah. we're not saying that we're going to do that. Pete Hegseth was out saying that this is not a regime change operation, and we are not doing democracy promotion. That Pete Hegseth said that. So we can't both be on the side of the Iranian people and also not be interested in a regime change war and democracy promotion. Like, you have to do one or the other. The Iranian people cannot overthrow. Just really quick,
let me jump in. Health matters above anything else. There's no doubt about that. And sometimes being told you're fine with no real plan is simply not good enough. Well, Superpower puts you in control with all the data you need. One simple lab test, either at your home or a local lab, measures more than 100 biomarkers. And the Superpower app lets you see everything from heart to hormones, vitamin levels, and even environmental toxins. You get a personalized, actionable plan which is tailored uniquely for you. Make this the year you stop guessing about your health. Not only has Superpower reduced their price to just $199, but for a limited time, our viewers and listeners get an additional $20 off with the code PIERS, P-I-E-R-S. Head to superpower.com and use code PIERS at checkout for $20 off your membership. And after you sign up, be sure to mention that I sent you. Tim, I would simply say to you, Syria. I mean, in Syria, very recently, we saw the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad very, very quickly, and it was actually driven by the people. Now, there are legitimate concerns about the leader of the rebel group, but so far, you would say tentatively, it's been an improvement on what the Syrian people were enduring under Assad. But it's going to be a long game to watch. There.
Piers.
But my point being, the United States objective was achieved there without boots on the ground, wasn't it?
Well, that was Turkey's objective.
Yes.
In the United States, that was not our objective. We weren't Turkey armed a rebel group in Syria. Is that what we're going to do? Okay, again, that would be a coherent plan. Like, we have picked a group. Pompeo said over the weekend, we like the MEK or the Kurds or whoever. We're going to arm them and provide them weapons and intelligence. That's what Turkey did. And I think they ended up having kind of catastrophic success in Syria. I don't even think that Turkey planned on that group so easily toppling the Assad regime. Again, maybe that could happen in Iran. The point that I'm trying to make, Piers, is that there is no coherent objective being offered by this administration. Like, you have Ben Ferguson on right now saying that what they want is freedom for the Iranian people. That's not what Pete Hegseth was saying this morning. That's not. Donald Trump, just really quick, one more thing. Donald Trump, speaking of the incoherence,
I want to
just let me do one more thing, then you can talk, Ben. One more thing. Donald Trump said that he, like you, pointed to Venezuela and talked about how successful that is. This is very different from Venezuela in a couple of reasons. Number one, 4 people have already died. That didn't happen in Venezuela. Number two, we had a clear successor. Donald Trump told the New York Times that we had 2 or 3 successors in mind. All of them are dead. They've all been killed. He said to The Atlantic or to John Carl, I think, at ABC last night, that we don't know who the successor is now. So this is very much not a Venezuela situation. It is not a regime change.
I refer to Venezuela about troops on the ground in response to that. And I think you're intellectually honest enough to understand that. I don't think I have to explain it to you like a third grader. I think you're now just trying to act like Venezuela and Iran are the same thing. They're very different places. That is obvious.
You were the one that said
they're
the same thing.
Venezuela was very simple. We had troops go in and take out the leader, and then we left. That's the same thing that we're talking about now.
Right. Well, 4 troops have died in this case, so it's already very different than that. It's already very different than that. 4 troops have died.
Again,
so it's already very different, and we don't even have a successor in mind.
Dying for a political point you're trying to score. I know you don't like the president. I know you don't like this plan. But let me also say this about Iran.
What's the plan?
There are 2 objectives here. I'm going to tell you the 2 objectives since you put words in my mouth. Number one, it's to make sure you take out a regime that is sponsoring terrorism all over the world and has made it very clear that they want to do what they did in Israel, also in America and other places. So it's a national security standpoint there. It's also a national security standpoint with oil in the Strait of Hormuz as well. That's very clear. They're worried about that area as well. And the third is, yes, when you get rid of someone like this, of course, you want the people to be able to be free in their country and not be able to be killed in the streets like we've witnessed, where tens of thousands of them have been exterminated in the last month while they try to stand up to their regime. So there can be multiple things here. Is that different than Venezuela? Of course, because every nation is different. I think you should know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, look, that doesn't sound like a plan because we don't know who the next regime is.
Hang on. I want to bring in the other panel members. Let me bring in the other panel members. Dave Smith. I want to bring in Dave Smith first. I will get to you, JoJo. Dave Smith, what's your feeling about what we're seeing here? I mean, I look, for example, I've got lots of friends who live in Dubai. They moved there for a good economic life, the sunshine, but also primarily safety. They would tell me they leave their front door open in Dubai because nobody gets robbed, right? This is a very safe place to live. Suddenly they're waking up and they're seeing 5-star hotels getting blown up. And it's causing enormous uncertainty throughout that entire region, and causing enormous damage to the perceived business model of places like Dubai. So there are real-time consequences now of this within 48 hours of these strikes, which make it very, very different to anything we've seen before. Do you think this can it work? And if it doesn't work, where does that leave us all?
Well, if it doesn't work, Donald Trump has destroyed his presidency, which I think is the most likely scenario at this point. And I don't say that with any, glee. I mean, I think that's really bad for the country. And I understand that this is kind of devolving into like a partisan fight, but look, I mean, the justification for this war is totally incoherent. It's actually worse than any of the wars in the global war on terrorism, just in terms of how incoherent the justification is. I mean, all of the wars were based off lies, but at least the lies kind of, I mean, at this point, it's like, I don't even know what, I mean, I guess Ben will just defend whatever war Donald Trump launches, but their nuclear program was totally,
taking out the worst
of course.
You already, that's a good idea.
I know, we've all heard the talking points. Okay.
Are you saying Iran is not the worst sponsor of terrorism? Like, serious question. Like, you act like you don't know that. You do realize that Iran fundamentally funds, trains Hezbollah, Hamas, and other terrorist groups.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yes, I know.
I mean, that's not like breaking news.
Can I just talk for a second since you already spoke?
Sure, but like,
honestly,
don't act like you're a smart guy. Like, you should know that. You're downplaying Iran's threat to the world.
Dude, shut up for a second. I've heard a million times idiots
saying
like
it's
you
not
who
true.
go on Fox News.
You're saying it's not true.
Dude, can I just fucking talk, dude? This is so boring. I've heard a million of Fox News.
Then.
Okay.
I go on CNN
one more
too,
time.
by the way. Okay, so like it's not just Fox News, buddy.
Okay, so I've heard the talking point a million times that Iran is the #1 sponsor of terrorism. It is something that the war hawks love to say. I have actually never once heard a coherent definition of terrorism and then a demonstration that they're the worst of it. The IDF is the worst terrorist organization in the region. Let's get real. The United States of America is arguably the worst terrorist organization in the world. If you want to look over the last 25 years, how many innocent civilians we've slaughtered. You're getting us into the neocon. Yeah, that's right. You're getting us into the neocon 7th war, which they've been dying for the last 25 years.
You might want to take down, by the way.
No, actually, if you love this country, if you're a real patriot, you'd have to hate this government.
You said America
and the
killed
war
like the worst terrorists in the world, more than Iran,
them.
dude.
Yeah. DC killed a lot more people than Iran did, and that's George W. Bush and Barack Obama and Joe Biden and Donald Trump. It has nothing to do.
Okay.
Dude, just all you can do is just interrupt because you know you have no point on your side. Anyway, Piers, what actually
are there
matters
not mass
here?
graves in Iran?
Anyway,
true or
what actually matters here is that the calculation has been drastically changed and the incentives have been changed by Donald Trump, even since the 12-day war. Look, for the 12-day war to work out the way it did, really relied on a major piece of that puzzle, which was that Iran, for self-preservation reasons, showed restraint in their response. They called ahead. They let us know where they were going to target. They made sure they didn't kill any Americans. This time, once Donald Trump killed the Ayatollah, they offered through their Italian negotiators, they offered a ceasefire. Iran said no. Iran has now made the calculation that they simply can't let America come in and kill the Ayatollah and not respond, because then they'll just keep picking on them. Donald Trump already announced this was a regime change war with no plan. Absolutely no plan. As he has admitted, as Rubio has admitted, they have no plan for what comes next. And this is the scenario, I gotta say, man, I hate to be vindicated like this, Piers, but this is the scenario that all of us were warning about since well before the 12-day war. That now you've gotten yourself into a situation, Americans are dead. I think Mr. Miller misspoke when he said 4 people are dead. 4 Americans are dead over there. Probably more to come. Donald Trump says more to come. We've had a couple Americans killed in Austin in a blowback terrorist attack that's happened already since then. And like, dude, the lack of wisdom here from the Trump administration, like, you have no idea what you just kicked off. There is absolutely no reason to think that this thing is not going to be a catastrophe, just like the last 6 theaters in the global war on terrorism. And by the way, for just final one very quick last point. I'm sorry, Piers, but then really, interrupting me there a bunch. Let me just say one thing. For all the supposed pretend intellectuals out there, like the Gad Sads and the Sam Harris, who have spent a career talking about how violent and irrational the Muslim world is because you can't even draw a cartoon of Muhammad or they'll start killing people. Hey, what do you think happens when you murder an Ayatollah? Did anyone know that that's not just a political figure to the Shiites, who we've had no beef with really
your
so
foreign
far?
Policy
We've never
is
had a
don't kill
Shiite
bad guys because they fight back. That's like the most stupid foreign policy I've ever heard of.
Oh, no, actually, Ben, my foreign policy is don't
Adolf
start
Hitler,
wars
I guess,
of
would still be
aggression.
alive if we use your foreign policy.
Oh, good one, Ben. You just speak in slogans. My foreign policy is
Adolf
don't
Hitler's
start...
a bad guy. You better not attack him or go after him and stop him from invading all of Europe and taking over the world. Don't mess with Vladimir Putin ever, because that guy's a really bad guy. That's your foreign policy.
So Ben, you're just going to say the dumbest thing and then interrupt me if I respond.
You literally just said, I'm in Texas where the Austin attack happened, and your policy is, hey, be really nice to bad people and then they might not kill you. That is your foreign policy. And you're now saying that Donald Trump is somehow responsible for a terrorist that said property of Allah and had a Iranian t-shirt on, saying, oh no, that's Donald Trump's fault, not actually the terrorist's fault. That is the problem with so many of you on the left.
You let me, Piers,
because you don't understand that sometimes you have to take out bad guys.
I'm 7 clicks to the right
I actually want to give two other. I want to give two other panel.
Interrupting me, dude. Shut up.
Look, two other panel members have so far said. Okay, guys. Two other panel members have said nothing.
I didn't really get to say anything either, but all right, whatever.
Well, you said a lot, and it was interesting. I want to bring in Jack Posobiec. Jack. It's interesting to watch how the conservative right is reacting to this. You got Tucker Carlson, one of the big figures of the conservative right, going off the deep end about this attack, calling it disgusting, calling it evil. That would have been unprecedented 20 years ago to hear someone who was such a big figure of the conservative right in America going after a Republican government's decision to do something like this in such a virulent manner, rhetorically. What do you feel about this? I think a lot of what Dave Smith is saying is what the fears a lot of people on the right have about this too. The polls show this is a very unpopular move. Even Republicans are heading now nearly below 50% support for this, which is unprecedented for a military action like this under a Republican president. How are you feeling about this?
Well, Piers, last time I was on here, that's exactly what I said. I said that if this turns into a full-on regime change, forever war, kind of prolonged, protracted situation, that's something that's going to prove to be very unpopular in this midterm year. And I'm certainly not going to change my analysis on that. That's just true. That's just the absolute truth of the matter. The question is, I think, and still remains, will this be a Venezuela-style situation where there's going to be one military operation, a brief operation, and then this protracted, or I should say, immediate ceasefire, and then a situation where a new leadership is brought in and the U.S. is working with that leadership. You did hear the president say that, I believe, to Bret Baier earlier today. And yes, he's been making a lot of statements across all of media and saying different things in different places. But we have heard, and I've heard from the administration, some rhetoric regarding this Venezuela model, which does seem to be very well celebrated. And of course, he pointed that out at the State of the Union last week. But look, Charlie Kirk is someone who lobbied very hard back in June, along with myself, to say, do not push this, and warned very succinctly, I believe, and very strongly, that younger voters are not going to be on board with this because they are war weary after looking at Iraq, after looking at Afghanistan, after seeing the pullout in Kabul in 2021 and saying, what is it worth? What is it for? So you see this split really within MAGA, where older voters, it's 50, 55 up, very, very, very supportive. Then younger voters, very, very against. Gen Y, kind of in the middle. Global war on terror veterans, generally in the middle. That's what's going on. President Trump ultimately is the only one who knows how it's going to shake out. J.D. Vance, of course, up there as well. And so that's going to be the situation. Look, those guys know what the situation is on the ground, and those guys obviously realize that they're the ones conducting this election right now in the midterms, and certainly they know what the stakes are.
Okay, JoJo, thank you for your patience, and welcome back to Uncensored. What is your view about the killing of the Ayatollah Khomeini? I mean, for 47 years, it's indisputable that the Iranian regime has been a ruthless, barbaric regime which has terrorized its own people, which has sponsored terrorism throughout the Middle East, predominantly aimed at Israel, through the tentacles of Hezbollah, through the Houthis, through Hamas, and so on. It celebrated October the 7th and all these things. None of that is really up for debate. I mean, that's what they've been. The question becomes a little bit like the debate about Saddam Hussein at the start of the century, when I was editor of the Daily Mirror here in the UK and took a very strong position against that war, because I did not believe that we had established, the US and the UK in particular, a reason to take him out. That the weapons of mass destruction seemed to be a construct that wasn't built on evidence. That turned out sadly to be true. And we had 20 years of mayhem that came out of that, led predominantly by the rise of ISIS, who filled the vacuum and caused terrorism for 2 decades. So, I have a long memory when it comes to these kind of things. And that was a situation where it needed boots on the ground, which turned out to be a complete disaster. Here, Donald Trump is holding the possibility of committing more boots on the ground to a country of 93 million people, where you have, 1.5 million heavily armed people that work for the regime, from the Republican Guard down to the regular army to the paramilitaries. This is an enormous number of heavily armed, committed to the regime people who will repress any uprising of the kind Donald Trump wants, I would imagine, in a very quick and very draconian way, as we saw only last month. So this seems to me, when you add in the attacks on hotels in Dubai and the rest of it, it seems to me a very precarious situation. So when Jack says, well, Donald Trump knows what's happening, I'm not completely convinced that he can know what's happening. And it's the unpredictability of this which is concerning to me.
No, thank you. You're absolutely right. I'm not going to be shedding a tear for the Ayatollah, that's for sure. But if we're going to be talking about, oppressive, despotic regimes who hate America, and our country's goal being going in to have regime change, we could go into a lot of countries. I mean, Donald Trump is literally rolling out the red carpet for Vladimir Putin. He's falling in love with Kim Jong-un. But the thing is, in this particular case, they keep moving the reasoning behind this attack. They can't agree with themselves. Donald Trump said it was an imminent threat. Donald Trump said it was about regime change. Pete Hegseth said it's about preventing them from having an umbrella, preventing them from having nuclear weapons. Ted Cruz says there's no evidence that they've seen that they even have the capacity for nuclear weapons or for enrichment. The thing is, they haven't thought this through. Donald Trump doesn't think things through. There is no end game. There was no clear objective. I'm still waiting for him to explain this to anybody coherently. He hasn't done so. But to your point originally about this being America first or not America first, this is yet another one of Donald Trump's campaign promises that he has not delivered on. And if I'm somebody who voted for him, I'm looking right now at all of these things that he said he was going to do and hasn't. This one in particular, no new foreign wars. I remember every MAGA idiot in my replies telling me to cry harder because they got the guy who was going to get us out of these long protracted wars. He said he was going to release the names in the Epstein files. Now we know he had to be compelled by Congress to do so. Then he slow-walked those and has only released half and redacted 96% of his own name mentions. He also said he was going to bring down the cost of groceries. He was going to bring down our electric bills. Not only is that not happening, everything is moving in the wrong direction. Our GDP, inflation, etc. Another promise that he made to his base who voted for him that he is not delivering on. And to me, this one is the easiest one because we have, as you played at the top, soundbite after soundbite after soundbite of him saying he was going to be the candidate for peace, that he was going to get us out of these wars, that Kamala Harris was going to be the one that got your sons and daughters into these protracted wars. And by the way, Hegseth said today, Donald Trump said today, we could be looking at 5 weeks. Neither one of them will say we won't put boots on the ground. And that is very different from what they said in Venezuela. And to the point about Venezuela being a success, I would ask the people of Venezuela if that is actually true, if their lives are markedly better right now since we went in and removed their leader. That's what I'm concerned about. I'm desperately concerned that there is no strategy
based
here.
on the reaction in the streets, I'm pretty sure they'd say yes.
I want to finish this point. This is very important to me, sir.
Yeah.
Pardon me. I just really need to finish this.
We're talking about Iran. Like, you're way off
I
the
really
reservation.
need to finish this. This is near and dear to my heart because I grew up near a military base. My father worked for the Department of Defense. He was based on a military base. Most of my siblings have served. This is near and dear to my heart. The men and women of our military, our service members, deserve better than a commander-in-chief who does not have a plan. They deserve better than a 5-time draft dodger who called the fallen of war suckers and losers. They deserve better than someone who demeaned a POW, disparaged a Gold Star family, insulted a military widow, desecrated Arlington National Cemetery, told John Kelly that he did not know, as he stood on hollow ground, what was in it for them. Our men and women of our military, our service members, they deserve a commander-in-chief that doesn't say it is what it is when they die in combat.
Just remember that.
Let me bring. Okay, Ben Ferguson.
Overwhelmingly voted for him twice.
Hang on, Ben Ferguson.
Actually, 3 times.
This statistic is incredible. So Axios reported on Monday that no president in the modern era has ordered more military strikes against as many different countries as Donald Trump. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene, a former big Trump MAGA supporter, said, we said no more foreign wars, no more regime change. We said it on rally stage after rally stage, speech after speech. Trump, Vance, basically the entire admin campaigned on it and promised to put America first and make America great again. There are 93 million people in Iran. Let them liberate themselves. But Iran's on the verge of having nuclear weapons. Yeah, sure. We've been spoon-fed that line for decades. And Trump told us all that his bombing this past summer completely wiped it all out. It's always a lie, and it's always America last. That's coming from a once massive Trump supporter, as is Tucker Carlson most of the time, who calls this evil and disgusting.
Yeah, both of them are fringe people, individuals now, not in the Republican conservative movement. Let's just be clear. You're quoting someone that used to be pretty sane and now has gone pretty crazy. Marjorie Taylor Greene, the most important thing she ever did
was Ben Ferguson is mainstream.
Ben's the mainstream. Ben's the mainstream.
I'll go back to what I was saying. He is fringe. Absolutely. The overwhelming majority of conservatives understand Tucker Carlson right now.
is the mainstream. Tucker Carlson is fringe.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is like, is someone, the most important thing she ever did in her time in Congress was wait until the deadline to get her pension to resign one day afterwards. So, like, you want to talk about being a selfish person.
Marjorie Taylor Greene was original MAGA.
But let me answer the question. Let me answer the question. You're all liberals. I'm a conservative. And don't act like you know what we know on the conservative side. I won't tell your liberal whack friends what you guys believe. Like
Neo. Make sure you put the neo in front of it. Neo-conservative.
Whatever you are, you go do your thing over there.
Can I allow? I would like to allow the mainstream conservative member of the panel, Ben Ferguson, to respond.
You know the rules, Piers. The rules are if he interrupts me my whole time, then I'm going to do it to him. Those are the Piers Morgan rules. No.
I can't stop laughing about Marjorie Taylor Greene being fringe.
As always, all panelists can behave in any way they think shows them off in the best possible light.
Marjorie Taylor Greene resigned from Congress because she couldn't win re-election. That's because the Republicans excommunicated her. Yes. Otherwise, she would have won. I don't know if you don't know how to read polling.
Okay, but
she read her own polling and saw she wasn't going to win.
Okay, but Ben. All right, but Ben. Let me just that Axios stat alone. Using that stat as you run 7 months now away from the midterm elections. If this goes the wrong way for Donald Trump, and it could easily go the wrong way, they get stuck into a terrible quagmire, Israel and the United States in
it costs you the midterms.
It doesn't. There's no quick win or whatever. This could lead to a complete shellacking in the midterms. Trump becomes a lame duck president in that eventuality, and this becomes the thing he's remembered for. I mean, the stakes are incredibly high here.
Yeah. Look, I agree with Jack on the point he made earlier, that if this goes long and there's troops on the ground in a more traditional way, this will be a disaster, and there's a very good chance the Republicans will get beat in the midterms. That means that Trump's agenda disappears. That means investigations and impeachment start right away. Democrats have already said that. They will go after him and impeach him again and go after anyone around him, impeach him again. And I know you guys are grinning in the bottom because you guys like to use lawfare instead of like actually listening to the American people. But what the president of the United States of America has made it clear here, he believed that Iran, this was the moment to act. And this was a moment, you guys were spying on multiple Republicans and abusing power of the government. Susie Wilds and the FBI directors came out. I know you can laugh about it because you guys are sick. Like you use the government to weaponize it.
They went after
like, there's a fact here on that.
Democratic members of Congress, lawfare? Are you serious? You guys literally were spying on citizens in the government because you didn't like them. That is a fact. Period. And you'll do it again if you get control of the House and the Senate. I understand that. Anybody who would not initiate an investigation into his adversary. You want to talk about lawfare? I'm sorry.
Let's not all speak at once.
Right. If Donald Trump doesn't get this right and do it in the way that he's described, which is a short term, we're talking about weeks here, right? 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and then be able to pull out, it will be a disaster going into the midterms. I think Donald Trump understands that clearly. And I also think he thought the objective here was worth that risk because he wasn't making this decision for a political reason. If he was, he wouldn't have done it, right? The polling data that you sit here and you look at, you're like, hey, let's don't go there. Let's not do this. The polling data says it's not worth it going to midterms. I think it was a national security decision for him. I think he understood that national security perspective. I think he understood the threat that Iran was to us and the rest of the world. And I think he saw an opportunity here and he said, I'm going to take this opportunity to do this because I believe in it that much. If you were making decisions solely based on polling, then you wouldn't make this decision. I think it's a national security decision, which, by the way, is what we want our presidents to do, whether it's Obama or Joe Biden.
All right. Let me bring in Tim Miller. I mean, I would categorize it, Tim, more as a massive roll of a dice by Donald Trump. I think he's been persuaded about the timing by Netanyahu and the Israeli government, who've been itching to do this now for a very long time. I'm not saying that Trump doesn't think it would be a good thing for the world. I think he probably does. But I think the timing is so fascinating to me. And the reason I say a roll of the dice is because politically, the downside if this goes even remotely wrong or just gets stuck for the next few months is so clear to me. And this could absolutely cost Trump everything in terms of political power come November. And once he becomes somebody without control of the House, as Ben said, your ability to do anything just gets paralyzed until the end of your term. So the stakes are incredibly high. But there is another way to look at this, which is Trump has been pretty uniquely successful in doing precision attacks on the foreign stage, whether it's Soleimani when he took him out, whether it's al-Baghdadi when he took him out, whether it was the 12-day war last summer, time and again, whether it's bringing a ceasefire to Gaza when nobody really thought there was a chance of that.
Venezuela.
Time and again, Trump has gone in and done quick surgical strikes on places. It's been a very different philosophy to boots on the ground, years in war and so on. And that's probably emboldened him to do this. And he's probably calculating that by taking out the entire hierarchy of this regime, which appears to be what's happened, to the extent where the next 2, 3, 4, and 5 people they thought might be potential next leaders apparently all got killed too. Even the ex-president, Ahmadinejad, who I once interviewed, has been killed apparently. So a complete wipeout of all the sort of top names in the Iranian regime. That he's calculating this could lead to a domino effect where you could see the regime getting toppled because actually a number of the Revolutionary Guard perhaps turn on it, the army, regular army follow, suddenly the people feel that this is moving the right way, and as we saw in Syria, boom, suddenly I'm not saying this will happen, but I'm saying we have seen this happen in different places around the world, and it can happen very quickly if people feel like if the ones supporting the regime believe it's going down and the people sense that, these things can change very quickly. So you could be in a position by the summer where Donald Trump actually has affected genuine change there. The people have risen up and Iran is removed of a 47-year repressive regime. And that could play well for Trump. And it could lead to the Abraham Accords, having Saudi Arabia join it and others, because I do think the big strategic error Iran has made is attacking the Gulf states. And I think the moment they've done that, they've lined up all these places like UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and others lined up now behind an America-Israel a pact going into Iran, which I didn't think I'd ever see. So I think a lot of things are possible here. Tim, your response to my thoughts.
Things. Yeah, a couple things. Look, just how strained that hypothetical case of how it could possibly go well is, I think speaks to the just political disaster and the danger of this situation for Trump. Obviously he's high on his own supply because some of these other, one-off strikes have gone well. This is obviously very different than that. Yes, obviously he's being influenced by MBS and BB to a degree that they might be just kind of walking around the dog park at this point, convincing him to get into this. But this is such a different scenario than all of those other scenarios, as mentioned earlier. And thanks, Dave, for the update on the language. But 4 American troops are already dead. And again, for what? In your strained scenario, the best case scenario is that maybe in the future there'll be an internal struggle in Iran and a regime that we like better, but we don't know who it is, will be taking control. If you polled the American people just 2 weeks ago and said, hey, would it be worth 4 American deaths for the possibility that maybe Iran might get a better regime, but we're not sure who it is? I think that would be like a 20 to 80, only 20% of the country, like Ben and a couple of his buddies, would be for that. Most of the Republicans wouldn't be for that. And look at this panel. Jack was one of Trump's biggest supporters. He's hedging on this. In his answer.
I supported him.
Dave was one of Trump's biggest supporters. He's even more hostile than me against this. He's calling us terrorists. I'm not even that far. Among Trump's own base, this is a disaster. Independent voters, you look at polls of all ages. Last independent poll I saw had 19% in support of this among independents. And the best case scenario you can point out is that maybe there'll be some new leadership, but we don't know who it is, and we're not supporting a particular person. That's crazy. It's a crazy risk. And sure, the Arab states are with us for now, but are they going to continue to be if their hotels and their oil reserves are being bombed? Are the people of UAE and Qatar and Saudi as on board with this as their leadership? I'm skeptical of that. What about our European allies? Oil prices in Europe are up 50% today. And this thing is already a disaster. We're on day 3 and they have no plan for getting out of it. It's we're going to bomb them for 4 more weeks and hope that something good happens. Good luck. Yeah, it's a roll of the dice. Well, it's interesting.
Dave Smith, the oil part of this is fascinating to me because I wasn't an expert on the Strait of Hormuz until yesterday when I really studied it at length. I was like, well, okay, what goes through this strait, okay? And, it turns out 20% of the oil production of the world goes through this strait on a daily basis. And it's millions and millions of barrels. But interestingly, 78% of it goes to Asia, predominantly China. Right, about 10% goes to the United States and about 10% to Europe. So actually, the biggest victim of closing the Strait of Hormuz would be China, who are a traditional ally of the Iranian regime, which raises all sorts of questions. But Iran itself is somebody that exports a lot of its oil through the Strait of Hormuz. So they would also damage their own ability to export oil. So they'd be damaging their biggest oil importer from the strait, which is China, and their own ability to export it. It seems to me that playing that card doesn't suit Iran and doesn't suit China. So you're left then with purely the military card, aren't you?
Well, they're already playing that card, right? And they sunk a tanker the other day, and then what happens then is that the insurance companies get worried about insuring ships going through there, and so you kind of in effect can shut down the Strait of Hormuz. But to your point, Piers, about attacking other countries in the region and shutting down the strait, the idea here, it seems like the thinking from the Iranian perspective is that they feel like they have to give us a bloody nose in this one, that they can't allow us to do this without suffering some. Now, that's a very difficult calculation, but of course, Piers, they're making a calculation with a knife to their neck. The most powerful government in the history of the world's commander-in-chief announced regime change and that they have to go. I think also, I would probably even state stronger than what I said at the beginning. It's not that if this goes bad, Donald Trump has destroyed his presidency. If this isn't an overwhelming success in that very unlikely scenario that you laid out, I think this destroys Donald Trump's presidency. If he goes over there and just kills a bunch of Iranians. The result of this is that a bunch of Iranians are dead, a bunch of Israelis are dead, a bunch of U.S. soldiers are dead, but the regime still stands, even though he announced regime change, and then he just comes back. I mean, I think that's death for the rest of his presidency. So everybody has now painted themselves into a very difficult position to get out of. You know, Jack had maybe a couple months ago, Jack put out like a mini documentary on the war in Iraq, which was excellent. It was excellent. I shared it on Twitter. And one of the things, I believe you had this in there. I can't remember. I've watched too much stuff about the war in Iraq. But I believe you had in there the quote on Meet the Press where Dick Cheney says right before the war in Iraq, it'll be weeks, not months. You know, it's really easy at the beginning of it's really easy at the beginning of this thing to say, oh, well, don't worry. The plan is it'll go really great. But I mean, Piers, it is true. Look, people were celebrating in the streets. That is true. People in Venezuela were celebrating in the streets. Of course, the regime isn't gone, and the people in Venezuela don't have any more liberty than they did then. Now, of course, in Iraq, which is a super majority Shiite country, there were a lot of people celebrating in the streets when Saddam Hussein first fell. He was a brutal dictator who oppressed the majority of his population. But the thing is this, Piers, right? In the last Iranian election, the president who was far to the right of the last president got like 20% of the vote. You know, Iran is a country of 90 million people. If you got even 5 million people who are committed, you know, Ayatollah-loving Islamists, well, that's more than enough for a healthy insurgency. And so the thing is that this is, if you
by
actually
the way, just for perspective, Saddam also got above 90% of the votes in his last election too. So there are major questions on is it a free and fair election. Let's be clear. Like I don't think it's fair to people in Iran to say that they voted for this guy, the Ayatollah. Saddam got over 90% every time he was on the ballot. Like that's unfair to people in Iran.
You're just missing the point.
It's not a fair election. Like that's just crap.
I'm not claiming it is. You're just missing the point.
Well,
but I'm not claiming it is.
Don't use the stat to act like they chose a guy that they didn't
you just don't
chose. Like people are getting run over in the streets and killed by him.
They're not real elections necessarily.
Then don't act like they are.
I mean, you just
don't
won't
act
let
like
me
they are.
finish
You
the
just
sentence.
quoted like, hey, well,
you know you can't win the argument.
Guy, and then you're like, okay, maybe it was a fake election. Maybe it's not a real election.
I admire that you know you can't win the argument, so you just have to talk over me every time. Listen, man, we've already Piers.
True or false? Was a free and fair election in Iran the last time there was an election? True or false?
Pierce,
was it a free election in Iran?
True or false?
Pierce,
you love
because you guys, I have to simplify it for you.
Okay, cool. Pierce,
let Dave finish his point.
For the last 2 years, Pierce, for the first time, really, in my lifetime and maybe in American history, the war hawks have had to come debate us. Like it's a new reality now. Like Ted Cruz was trying to tweet at me the other day. Like now that the media has been decentralized and the corporate media is destroyed, they actually have to come in and have the argument. And we have so consistently destroyed you guys over the last 2 years that
just like what the propaganda you put out about the elections in Iran. You destroyed us. Yeah.
Dude, again, you can't just stop interrupting, Piers. He can't let me make the point. This is now a pro-Palestinian country. That's how bad you guys have lost the argument. So you guys are all giddy now because you got your war, even though the American people are totally against it. Just wait, dude. What you did, by the way, Piers, keep in mind what Ben just said.
It's almost like you're rooting for American failure so you can be right on Twitter.
Piers,
that's pretty messed up.
Okay, so Piers, this is how stupid this is. If I were to say to someone, don't get hammered and go out and drive your car, and then you get hammered and go out and drive your car, and I go, hey, you're hammered, come home right now. Ben would say, you're rooting for me to crash the car. No, dummy, I'm rooting for you to get out of the car.
No.
You're fucking,
the difference between you is that you're sitting there and you're saying you don't care about the people in Iran. You don't care about the American troops that have been killed by Iran. You guys talked about
the reality.
Piers, what a fucking dumb argument you're reducing. You don't care about people. Fuck off.
You know, the reality, Dave, about what you said about the last 2 years in the media and stuff is actually one of the reasons why my show has become increasingly popular is precisely because you would not see a debate. You would not see a debate like we've seen between you and Ben Ferguson for the last hour anywhere on mainstream media.
Is that a debate?
And actually, it's
when you're telling people to F off, it's not.
It's actually an important and healthy thing that people who have diametrically opposed views have to duke it out with each other.
Well,
I feel like I learned things from both of you.
One quick point in, Pierce. One quick point that I didn't get
very
to get
quickly. We're running out of time, but very quickly.
If Ben is going to say, which by the way, my prediction on this, Donald Trump has lost the midterm elections, and if this thing goes bad, the 2028 election is gone and a Democrat will win. And even by Ben's own admission here, he's risking handing this country back over to the Democrats for what? To maybe liberate the people of Iran? That's America first? That we're going to risk President AOC over them getting their freedom? I mean, Jack, dude, you got to admit, man, we got to abandon this president now, dude. That's it. He chose Mark Levin and Lindsey Graham.
Okay, let me ask Jack. Okay, don't all talk at once. Don't all talk at once. I want to ask Jack this. So Polymarket, it's an interesting point, this, I think. So Polymarket have asked about the possibility of a ceasefire. Right, 1% by March the 2nd. I think I can agree with that. But by the end of March, 45% potentially. But the highest overall, April the 30th. There could be a ceasefire by then, so 65%. I think the interesting thing here is Trump's done a lot of U-turns recently about a lot of stuff. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if at some stage, if this is going the wrong way, he suddenly pivots to, you know what, we had a job to take out the Ayatollah and the top of this evil regime. We put them back in their box. They won't dare do this again. And he claims, or attempts to claim, a victory based on what has already been done, accepting that they can't do an awful lot more. Could you see that situation?
I mean, I could absolutely see that. Look, I was just saying before, Donald Trump is not George W. Bush. J.D. Vance is not Dick Cheney. So you can't put, it's apples to oranges comparison in that situation. And thank God they're not, right? Obviously.
Yeah, they're not even close.
That's why we haven't seen these troop movements talking. I mean, sure, he's never going to, announce in a press conference what the strategy is going to be. But we just haven't seen Marines and expeditionary units and Army being sent over. We've seen naval power, we've seen air power. So we just haven't seen boots on the ground really been seriously deployed to the area. What it looks like to me, I would be surprised if this thing goes beyond March, personally. That's what the president's been signaling in terms of 4 weeks. And he's already said that he thinks it's ahead of schedule because of this situation where they got, 40 to 49 members of the leadership out. So the minute I think that someone comes up, and it's just, reading the tea leaves out here, but the minute I think that someone comes up that seems to be a stable leadership, whether that be IRGC, whether that be the civilian president, whether that be another Ayatollah, I think they're going to take the
Could be anyone. Could be an Ayatollah. It could be the IRGC.
It could be Riley Gaines.
The Persian people. It could be a lady from the streets. We don't fucking know.
Yes, that's how the Iranian regime works. You guys
who the hell knows who
study
I
a
come
little
up to
bit.
lead Iran next. It's a great plan. I mean, at least George W. Bush
could be Marco Rubio.
Yes, it's very
final word. Okay, final word to JoJo. JoJo, very quickly. You look like you were indeed licking your lips at the prospect of all this potentially going so badly that you guys win the House in November.
Hold on a minute. I want to clarify something. We have, human lives that are at stake here. I am not hoping that it goes badly when it comes to our service members. I want to be very, very clear about that. I'm not hoping it goes badly at all, certainly not for the Iranian people. What I want to know is what our national security interests are here. What I want to know is how any of this makes any of us any safer. What I want to know is how any of this makes my grocery bill lower, lowers my electricity, or it gets more transparency for the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein. I want to know how this advances the United States of America. Because what I'm looking at is something that makes us less safe. And we're already, by the way, since we're all talking about this being the tipping point in the don't tip the waiter game, we're already looking at a country where everything is moving in the wrong direction. We are poorer, we are sicker, we are hemorrhaging manufacturing jobs. We're basically not even adding jobs to our economy at all right now. Again, GDP moving in the wrong direction. Inflation is basically stagnant. The United States of America is in a bad place right now. So for Donald Trump to choose to do this right now, when he doesn't have a real justification, he's certainly not made the case to the American people. It's deeply, deeply unpopular. Maybe 1/4 of the American people support this at all. I'm focused on what actually helps the United States of America. And when Donald Trump sold himself as the America First president, that he was going to make America great again. Joe Biden had our economy moving in the exact right direction. We were the envy of all of our peer nations. And Donald Trump once again inherited. Ben, do you ever just let someone talk?
Joe Biden, he was really
helping the economy. Do you ever just let someone talk? Yeah,
Joe,
in
I
fact,
really
every
shouldn't-
metric was
Joe
moving
Biden
in the
had
right
agree with
direction.
Ben.
Ben, let's do some jobs
in the
numbers.
right direction.
Hey, Donald Trump, by the way,
hang on.
Let's be clear.
We're not going back over Biden, other than to say even
Except
Joe
for his
Biden
economy
can't
sucked,
remember,
and that's why Donald Trump's president,
whether
but
he
okay,
got
keep
things
going.
right or wrong.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Joe Biden, I'm
was
sorry,
awesome.
spent.
Really, Piers?
Joe
Really,
Biden.
Piers? Do you
Joe
want to go
Biden,
there?
I'm afraid.
His economy
I'm
sucked,
sorry to say
and
this.
you know it.
Joe Biden was a zombie president for the last 2 years.
Yes.
And
And his economy was a
Let's not
disaster.
pretend otherwise.
Okay,
And
and
by
I
the way,
disagree with you.
and by the way,
on that.
Jojo, the other point I'd make is the U.S.
Ben,
economy
shut
is
up.
actually. Wait a minute. The U.S. economy is actually doing very well comparative to most countries in the world. The problem, Donald Trump has is that it's not filtering through to ordinary, hardworking people because inflation is still there. And inflation, as I explained to one of my guests the other day, who wasn't too sure what it was, inflation means prices are still going up. Until you have no inflation,
I know who you're
they
talking
go
about.
up. Yeah.
Right.
So look, I'm
And
going to leave
I saw
it
that
there.
interview
We've run
with
out,
Lauren Boebert,
Jojo,
and
we've run out of time. But I think the point I would make is the U.S. economy is actually doing well, and that is why I find this decision by Donald Trump extremely fascinating and very precarious. And we'll see how it plays out. But I think the midterms and Donald Trump's legacy hinge entirely on how this now plays out, this war on Iran. Thank you all to my panel very much.
Thanks, Piers.
Thank you.
Well, make sure you check out this week's episode of History Uncensored with Bianca Nobilo. She's put together a gripping account of Iran's remarkable history and how it will shape the success or failure of the war now raging today. History Uncensored, wherever you listen to podcasts, and of course on YouTube via the link in our show notes. Piers Morgan Uncensored is proudly independent. The only boss around here is me. If you enjoy our show, we ask for only one simple thing. Hit subscribe on YouTube and follow Piers Morgan Uncensored on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And in return, we will continue our mission to inform, irritate and entertain. And we'll do it all for free. Independent, uncensored media has never been more critical, and we couldn't do it without you.